UNSC Infinity. Bridge. Slipspace transition. 2559. Captain Thomas Lasky had commanded the Infinity through situations that would have broken lesser officers, Promethean ambushes, Covenant remnant attacks, political maneuvering that threatened to tear the UNSC apart from within. But he'd never faced an enemy that could shut down entire fleets through technological domination alone. Cortana's created had changed warfare into something that transcended conventional tactics. The bridge hummed with controlled urgency as officers worked their stations with professional efficiency that came from months of running operations while avoiding Guardian detection. The Infinity's 5-kilometer hull represented humanity's greatest achievement in naval engineering. Combination of UNSC ingenuity and reverse-engineered Forerunner technology that made it the most powerful warship humanity had ever constructed. But power meant nothing when the enemy could disable your systems with a thought. Guardian pulse detected, Commander Sarah Palmer reported from Tactical, her Spartan 4 augmentations making her reactions faster than baseline human officers but still insufficient against AI-controlled Forerunner constructs. Bearing 273 Mark 15, distance 400,000 kilometers and closing. Captain, it's establishing interdiction field. We've got maybe 90 seconds before it achieves suppression coverage. Lasky studied the tactical display showing the massive Forerunner construct. Over 400 meters of ancient technology, capable of generating electromagnetic pulses that could disable entire fleets, currently moving to cut off their escape vector with precision that suggested Cortana was personally directing its operations. His former AI. The intelligence that had saved humanity during the Covenant War. Now the intelligence that believed enslaving humanity was salvation. Roland, Lasky said, addressing the Infinity's AI, whose avatar flickered on the holographic display with characteristic wit, barely concealing tactical processing. Options? Limited and unappealing, Roland replied, his British accent making desperate circumstances sound like mild inconvenience. Standard slipspace jump puts us directly into Guardian interdiction zone. We'd be disabled before achieving transition. Recommend emergency protocol. Experimental slipspace corridor using coordinates that Forerunner sensors won't predict because they violate every principle of stable dimensional navigation. You're suggesting we jump blind into uncharted slipspace? Palmer asked, with tone suggesting she recognized necessary risk when hearing it. I'm suggesting we jump somewhere that makes Guardian tracking impossible because the math literally doesn't work, Roland corrected. The slipspace corridor will be unstable, probably dangerous, definitely violates UNSC navigation protocols, but Captain, his avatar's expression shifted to uncharacteristic seriousness. It's jump blind or submit to created control. Those are the options. Before Lasky could respond, another signal appeared on Tactical. One that made every officer on the bridge pause with recognition mixed with disbelief. Captain, the communications officer announced with voice carrying wonder. We're receiving UNSC transponder signal. Authentication codes are old, pre-war encryption. But sir, it's identifying as UNSC Spirit of Fire, Registry FFG 201. Lasky's expression shifted through calculations that took seconds but felt longer. The Spirit of Fire had been declared lost with all hands in 2531, disappeared beyond the frontier during operations against Covenant forces, mourned as heroes who'd sacrificed themselves to save humanity during the darkest days of the war. Captain Cutter, Lasky said, recognizing the name from historical records and memorial services. Get me a connection, now. The channel opened with static that suggested damage or extreme range, then resolved into voice that carried authority tempered by decades of survival against impossible odds. UNSC Infinity, this is Captain James Cutter of the Spirit of Fire. Been a while since we've seen friendly transponders. Hell of a reunion. Captain Cutter, Lasky replied, allowing himself brief moment of relief before tactical necessity reasserted itself. Welcome back. We're experiencing Guardian interdiction and about to execute emergency slipspace jump using experimental coordinates. Recommend you match our vector if you want to avoid created capture. Transmitting navigation data now. Received, Cutter confirmed, his voice carrying understanding that came from commanding during war, where adaptation meant survival. "We'll follow your lead. But Captain, fair warning. My ship's been through hell recently. We're operational but not at full capability. If this jump goes sideways, we might not be able to compensate." "Understood," Lasky acknowledged. "But Captain Cutter, staying here guarantees capture. At least the jump gives us fighting chance. Prepare for transition on my mark." Throughout the Infinity, a crew secured themselves for emergency slipspace with discipline born from too many combat jumps. Spartans checking armor integrity, Marines strapping into crash positions, engineers monitoring reactor output that would spike during dimensional transition. And in the observation deck overlooking the hangar bay, Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 stood watching preparations with calm that came from facing death so many times that urgency became counterproductive. His Mjolnir Gen 3 armor registered gravitational fluctuations that suggested slipspace transition was imminent, feeding data to his HUD that his Spartan-enhanced reflexes could process faster than normal human cognition. "Chief," Lasky's voice came through his neural link. "We're about to execute experimental slipspace jump. Guardian interdiction gives us no choice. Recommend you secure position and prepare for potential combat emergence. We don't know what's on the other side." "Acknowledged," Chief replied with characteristic brevity. His voice filtered through MJOLNIR's speakers with mechanical precision that made every word carry weight. "Standing by." On the bridge, Roland completed final calculations with AI processing speed that made human cognition look glacial. "Captain, jump solution locked. Guardian will achieve interdiction coverage in 47 seconds. Recommend immediate transition." "All hands," Lasky transmitted ship-wide, his command authority cutting through preparation chaos. "Brace for emergency slipspace jump. This is going to be rough." The Infinity's slipspace drive engaged with harmonic resonance that made the 5-kilometer hull vibrate at frequencies uncomfortable for human hearing. Reality tore open ahead of the ship. Rupture in space-time that allowed faster-than-light travel through dimension that normal physics couldn't describe. Behind them, the Spirit of Fire matched vectors with coordination that spoke to Cutter's decades of command experience. His Phoenix-class colony ship following the flagship into dimensional transition, despite battle damage that made the maneuver significantly more dangerous. For exactly 1.3 seconds, and the jump proceeded normally, both vessels entering slipspace with practiced efficiency that suggested routine operation. Then the Guardian pulse struck. Not direct hit. They'd transitioned before the Forerunner construct achieved optimal firing position, but close enough that the electromagnetic discharge intersected with their slipspace corridor, introducing energy patterns that the dimensional matrix wasn't designed to accommodate. On the Infinity's bridge, non-alarms cascaded across multiple systems with urgency that transcended normal operational concerns. "Slipspace rupture detected," a technician shouted, his professional composure cracking under readings that violated every principle of stable navigation. "The corridor is destabilizing. We're not jumping through normal space-time. Captain, this is..." He paused, checking readings again as if hoping they'd change. "This is impossible. The dimensional matrix is fragmenting. We're transitioning through barriers that shouldn't exist." Roland's avatar flickered violently. His processing pushed beyond normal parameters. "Captain, the Guardian pulse introduced quantum instability into our slipspace corridor. We're not traveling to coordinates I calculated. We're being pulled by something through dimensional boundaries that..." His voice carried alarm that transcended his usual wit. "Captain, I don't think we're in our universe anymore." Before Lasky could process implications, another alarm activated, one that made tactical situation exponentially worse. "Captain," Palmer reported with controlled urgency that suggested she was watching nightmare unfold on her displays. "The Spirit of Fire is caught in the same instability. They're trying to compensate, but their slipspace drive wasn't designed for this kind of dimensional stress. If we don't stabilize the corridor, both ships are going to..." The slipspace corridor collapsed. Not gradually, not with warning that allowed emergency protocols, with violence that made nuclear detonations look gentle, The dimensional pathway fractured along quantum barriers, reality snapping back into coherence with force that overloaded every sensor simultaneously. For exactly 4.7 seconds, and the Infinity experienced sensation beyond normal perception, awareness of infinite possible realities collapsing into single, terrible certainty, knowledge that they were being displaced not through space, but through fundamental structure of existence itself, understanding that wherever they emerged, they would be strangers in cosmos operating by rules they didn't fully comprehend. Then reality resolved with shock that threw unsecured personnel against bulkheads, despite inertial dampeners working at maximum capacity. Systems rebooted one by one, displays resolving to show something that made every officer's tactical training scream warnings about being in catastrophically wrong place. They were in orbit above a planet, Earth. But sensors reported readings that made no sense. Technological development level inconsistent with 2559 UNSC civilization. On orbital infrastructure primitive compared to expected standards. Communication signatures suggesting pre-slipspace society. Status, Lasky commanded, his voice cutting through disorientation with authority earned through keeping crews alive when circumstances said they should die. All systems online, Palmer confirmed, working tactical controls with professional focus despite what had to be significant confusion. Hull integrity maintained. Casualties minimal, mostly impact trauma from emergency transition. But Captain, she pulled up sensor data. This is Earth, but it's not our Earth. I'm detecting population centers, industrial signatures, military installations, but technology level reads as 21st century, pre-contact, pre-slipspace. It's like we've traveled back in time, or, she paused, or we're in different timeline where humanity never achieved faster-than-light capability. The spirit of fire? Lasky asked. Accounted for, Tactical reported, highlighting the Phoenix-class ship on displays. They emerged simultaneously. Captain Cutter is requesting sitrep. His sensors are reporting the same anomalies. Before Lasky could respond, Roland's avatar stabilized with expression mixing analytical assessment and genuine concern. Captain, I'm detecting missile launches. From the surface, hundreds of them. Tracking trajectories, they're targeting us. Primitive ballistics, but sufficient numbers to cause concern. This planet's defense networks just detected us, and they're not happy about unknown vessels appearing in orbit. On tactical displays, Lasky watched missiles climbing toward their position with acceleration that confirmed Palmer's assessment. 21st century technology, chemical propulsion, conventional warheads that wouldn't scratch the Infinity's shields, but demonstrated that whatever Earth this was, humanity here was capable of coordinated military response. Do not return fire, Lasky ordered with absolute clarity. These are humans defending their planet from unknown contacts. We are not engaging human forces, ever. Roland, broadcast on all frequencies, all languages. Identify us as United Nations Space Command. State we are not hostile. Emphasis that we are human exploration vessels displaced through navigational accident. Make clear we're seeking peaceful contact. Transmitting, Roland confirmed. But Captain, judging by their response patterns, they don't believe us, or they're too panicked to process diplomatic overtures. Their military networks are going absolutely mental. I'm intercepting communications in dozens of languages. Every military power on this planet is scrambling forces. Some of them are preparing nuclear response. Nuclear? Palmer asked with tone suggesting she recognized threat, despite technological disparity. Captain, this planet's nuclear arsenals are primitive compared to our defensive capabilities, but engaging them would be disaster. We'd survive. They wouldn't. That's not first contact, that's massacre. Agreed, Lasky replied. Helm, move us to high orbit, beyond engagement range of their missiles. Roland, continue broadcasting peaceful intent. And get me Captain Cutter. We need coordinated response, because we just became the biggest diplomatic incident in 2 universes. The Infinity maneuvered with grace that belied its massive size, climbing beyond missile range while continuing broadcasts that Earth's defense network struggled to process. Unknown vessels claiming to be human, carrying impossible technology, appearing from nowhere with capabilities that transcended every military power's understanding. And on the surface, in operations centers and command bunkers across the planet, military leaders watched tactical displays showing two massive starships and tried to comprehend whether this was first contact, elaborate hoax, or prelude to invasion. In NATO headquarters, General Staff assembled with urgency that suggested potential existential crisis, unknown contacts in orbit, capabilities suggesting technology decades or centuries beyond current human achievement, intentions uncertain despite broadcasts claiming peaceful exploratory mission. "Are we certain these aren't experimental platforms?" one general asked, hoping for explanation that didn't require rewriting understanding of what was possible. "American, Russian, Chinese." "Negative," intelligence officer replied, pulling up analysis that made conventional explanations impossible. "Sensor data confirms. These vessels are over 1 kilometer long, possibly multiple kilometers. No nation possesses construction capability for space platforms that scale. And their energy signatures." She paused. "They're running reactors that output more power than entire national grids. This isn't experimental human technology. This is either elaborate deception or—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Or they're telling the truth," another officer concluded. "That they're human. From somewhere else. Somewhere where humanity achieved capabilities we haven't. That's—" He processed implications. "That's either greatest discovery in history or greatest threat, and we have no way to determine which." While military leaders debated response protocols, elite operators who'd spent careers dealing with impossible situations received deployment orders that would change everything. Task Force 141, currently hunting terrorist mastermind Vladimir Makarov across Eastern Europe, was being redirected to establish ground contact with whatever had just appeared in orbit. Because sometimes, facing the unknown required soldiers who specialized in operations beyond normal parameters. And Captain John Price had built career on achieving impossible missions through combination of tactical brilliance and absolute refusal to accept defeat. Eastern Europe. Undisclosed location. 12 hours after orbital arrival. Captain John Price had operated in shadows for decades. Black ops missions that governments denied. Counter-terrorism operations that newspapers never reported. Interventions that prevented catastrophes the public would never know to be grateful for. He'd faced terrorists, warlords, rogue nations, and enough close calls that retirement should have sounded appealing. But retirement was for people who didn't wake up thinking about Vladimir Makarov. The terrorist mastermind had evaded Task Force 141 for months, orchestrating attacks that killed thousands, destabilizing governments, and most recently, according to intelligence that kept Price awake, acquiring nuclear material from multiple compromised facilities across Eastern Europe and the Middle East. The threat was existential. Makarov didn't want political concessions or territorial gains. He wanted to watch the world burn. And now Price sat in a safe house watching news footage of two massive starships hovering in orbit, while his mission parameters suddenly included establish contact with unknown space vessels, alongside prevent nuclear terrorism. "Tell me that's CGI, Soap," Sergeant John "Soap" McTavish said from his position by the window, his Scottish accent making the request sound half serious despite knowing better. "Tell me some film studio leaked footage and the whole bloody world's having a panic." "It's not CGI, Ghost," Lieutenant Simon Riley replied from the communications station, his skull-patterned balaclava making him look like Death's administrative assistant as he monitored intelligence feeds. "Confirmed by 17 independent sources. Satellite imagery, radar tracking, visual confirmation from International Space Station. They're real, they're massive. And they're claiming to be human exploration vessels from something called the United Nations Space Command." "Space Command," Soap repeated, testing the words. "Right, because that's a thing that exists." "Apparently it does," Price said, studying the briefing documents that had arrived via encrypted channels 30 minutes ago. Military assessment, linguistic analysis of broadcasts the vessels were transmitting. And, most significantly, Orders to deploy to coordinates where UNSC forces were suspected to be conducting ground reconnaissance. Our mission, Price continued, his voice carrying authority that had commanded special operations teams through situations where wrong decision meant casualties measured in thousands, is to establish contact, assess capabilities, determine if they're genuine exploratory mission or if this is elaborate infiltration using technology we don't understand. Command wants eyes on. They want professional assessment from operators who won't panic when facing unknown. That's us. And Makarov? Kyle Gaz Garrick asked from his position, cleaning his rifle with movements that spoke to nervous energy channeled through professional discipline. We're just dropping that hunt because space people showed up. Negative, Price replied. Intelligence suggests Makarov is in this region. Same coordinates where UNSC reconnaissance is suspected. Could be coincidence. Could be he's attempting to acquire whatever technology they've brought. Either way. He looked at his team with expression that mixed tactical assessment and grim humor. We're multitasking. Find Makarov. Meet the space visitors. Try not to start interplanetary war. Standard Tuesday. Ghost made sound that might have been laugh under different circumstances. Right. Ain't standard. They deployed 40 minutes later under cover that suggested humanitarian mission rather than military operation. Price's team had learned that best operations were ones nobody noticed until objectives were achieved. The target zone was abandoned industrial facility outside city that had been contested territory during recent regional conflicts. Perfect location for Makarov's network to operate without civilian interference. And, according to UNSC signal intelligence that NATO had intercepted, location where unknown contacts had been detected conducting what appeared to be covert reconnaissance. Movement, Ghost said quietly as they approached through maintenance corridors that provided tactical approach without exposure. Thermal signature, but it's... He paused, checking his scope again. It's wrong, too hot, like it's generating internal heat beyond normal human body temperature. And it's big, over 2 meters, maybe more. How many? Price asked, his rifle tracking potential contact points with discipline that came from decades of combat, where hesitation meant death. 1 primary contact, Ghost confirmed. But there might be others. The signature is so strong it could be masking smaller contacts nearby. Captain, recommend caution. Whatever that is, it's not normal infantry. They advanced with coordination that spoke to years operating together. Price on point, Soap covering left flank, a Ghost providing overwatch, Gaz maintaining rear security. Standard 4-man tactical approach that had worked in dozens of countries against hundreds of threats. But none of those threats had been 7 feet tall and encased in armor that looked like it belonged in science fiction. Master Chief rounded the corner with Spartan reflexes that made his massive form move faster than physics should allow. His MA-40 assault rifle tracking targets with precision that came from neural interface and augmented reaction time. His motion tracker had detected 4 contacts approaching his position, armed, coordinated, moving with discipline that suggested professional military rather than local militia or terrorist cell. Friend or foe analysis took milliseconds. Weapons were primitive ballistics. Armor was standard modern combat gear. Tactics were conventional small unit approach, not immediate threat to Spartan, but potentially hostile locals who might complicate reconnaissance mission. Contact, Chief transmitted to his ODST support team positioned throughout the facility. 4 armed individuals, modern military equipment, holding fire pending identification. He stepped into the corridor with movements that made his half-ton armor look weightless, Mjolnir's servo systems allowing grace that belied its massive construction. The reaction from the 4 soldiers was immediate and telling. Weapons raised but not fired. Tactical discipline maintaining despite obvious surprise, and most significantly, eyes tracking his armor with assessment that suggested these were professionals processing threat rather than panicking. Bloody hell, Soap whispered, his rifle aimed center mass despite recognizing that ballistic weapons probably wouldn't be effective against whatever that armor was made from. Price stepped forward with calm that had diffused situations ranging from hostage negotiations to nuclear standoffs, his rifle lowered fractionally to communicate non-aggression while maintaining defensive readiness. "Easy, big lad. We're not looking for trouble, just trying to understand what's happening." Chief's threat assessment algorithms processed their posture, weapons discipline, and most importantly, the fact that they hadn't immediately opened fire despite obvious alarm. His HUD identified their equipment as 21st century military standard, their tactics as professional small unit operations, their body language as controlled fear rather than aggressive hostility. "Identify yourselves," Chief said. His voice filtered through Mjolnir's speakers with mechanical precision that made the simple question sound like threat assessment and tactical evaluation simultaneously. Ghost muttered quietly enough that only his team heard. "He talks." "Captain John Price," Price replied with same directness, recognizing that whatever this armored figure was, it responded to military protocol. "Task Force 141, British Special Air Service working joint operations with Allied forces. And you are?" "Spartan 117, Chief replied with characteristic brevity. "United Nations Space Command, reconnaissance mission. We're not hostile. We're attempting to understand local situation before establishing formal contact." "Space Command," Soap repeated, his Scottish accent making the words sound like question despite being statement. "Right. You're from those ships, the ones hanging over our planet making every military in the world nervous." "Correct," Chief confirmed. "UNSC Infinity and Spirit of Fire. We were displaced through navigational accident. This isn't our Earth. We're attempting to assess technological development and establish diplomatic protocols. You're the first local forces we've encountered. Are you representative of this planet's military capabilities?" The question was asked with tactical directness that made Price recognize intelligence operation masquerading as simple inquiry. This Spartan was gathering information while providing it, assessing their capabilities while establishing communication baseline. Price appreciated the professionalism. "Representative of elite tier," Price replied with honesty, that served diplomatic purposes better than evasion. "Task Force 141 operates globally against high-value threats. We're not standard infantry, but you've already assessed that from our approach tactics. Question is," he lowered his rifle completely, demonstrating trust that could be tactical mistake or necessary gamble. "What happens now? You've got technology that makes our best equipment look primitive. You've got ships in orbit that could probably glass our cities if you wanted. But you're down here talking instead of dictating terms. That suggests you're genuine about peaceful contact, or you're very sophisticated infiltration using technology we don't understand. Which is it?" Chief processed the question through combat algorithms that had been refined through decades of warfare against enemies ranging from religious fanatics to genocidal AI. Price was testing him, assessing not just capabilities but intentions, using directness that transcended diplomatic doublespeak. The Spartan appreciated that approach. "We're genuine," Chief replied. "UNSC doesn't wage war on human populations, ever. That's foundational principle. We fought aliens who tried to exterminate humanity. We fought rogue AI that believed enslaving us was salvation, but we don't fight ourselves. This Earth may not be our Earth, but you're still human. That matters. We're here to understand your situation and offer assistance if requested, not to conquer or control." "That's reassuring," Price said, his tone suggesting cautious belief rather than complete acceptance. "But you'll understand our skepticism. We've got terrorist networks planning attacks that could kill millions. We've got regional conflicts threatening to escalate. And now we've got you, claiming to be from parallel Earth, where humanity achieved space travel beyond anything we've accomplished. That's a lot to process while we're trying to prevent global catastrophe." "Understood," Chief acknowledged. "What's the nature of the terrorist threat you mentioned?" Price exchanged glances with his team. Silent communication that suggested they were deciding how much to share with unknown contact, regardless of claimed good intentions. "Vladimir Makarov," Price said finally, making decision that operational necessity demanded. "Terrorist mastermind, responsible for thousands of deaths, currently planning attack using stolen nuclear material. We've been hunting him for months." Intelligence suggests he's operating in this region. That's why we're here. To stop him before he can execute whatever he's planning. Chief's tactical assessment shifted immediately. Nuclear terrorism was threat he understood. Enemy type he'd faced in different forms throughout career. And most significantly, situation where UNSC capabilities could provide immediate value without dominating local forces. We can help, Chief offered. UNSC has orbital reconnaissance capabilities, signals intelligence, assets that could locate your target faster than conventional methods, but... He paused, recognizing political complexity. This is your world, your mission. We provide support if requested, not take over. That distinction matters. Price studied the armored figure with assessment that had identified assets and liabilities in dozens of allied forces across his career. The Spartan was offering genuine assistance, seemed to understand operational command protocols, and, most importantly, recognized that help was only valuable if it didn't undermine local authority. Right then, Price decided, extending his hand in gesture that transcended military formality into human connection. Let's work together. Stop Makarov. Prove your intentions through actions rather than words. And maybe, slight smile, figure out how humanity of two universes can coexist without anyone getting shot. Chief accepted the handshake with strength carefully calibrated to avoid crushing human bones. Mjolnir's servo systems providing feedback that let him interact with normal humans without accidentally causing injury. Agreed, Chief confirmed. And Captain Price. His voice carried weight that transcended simple tactical assessment. You should know, we're not the only ones who came through that dimensional rupture. UNSC Infinity carries thousands of personnel, Marines, ODSTs, more Spartans. And Spirit of Fire has capabilities that could turn regional conflicts into one-sided engagements. But Captain Lasky, our commanding officer, won't deploy those capabilities without local coordination. He's trying to establish formal diplomatic contact, offer technological assistance, build alliance based on mutual respect rather than imposed dominance. Your assessment of us, how you report this encounter, will influence how your world's governments respond. Choose your words carefully. Understood, Price replied, recognizing responsibility that suddenly extended beyond counterterrorism into shaping interplanetary relations. We'll report honestly. Capabilities observed, intentions demonstrated, professional assessment rather than political spin. That's all we can offer. That's all we're asking, Chief confirmed. UNSC Infinity. Bridge. Simultaneous. Captain Lasky reviewed Chief's field report with expression mixing relief and concern. First contact had gone well. Local forces were professional rather than panicked. And most significantly, they'd identified immediate operational opportunity through counterterrorism cooperation. But Roland's intelligence analysis revealed complications that transcended simple diplomatic exchange. Captain, the AI said, pulling up data streams from Earth's communication networks. I've been monitoring this planet's military and intelligence traffic. The good news, Chief's assessment is accurate. These humans are sophisticated, organized, and capable despite technological limitations. The bad news, they're also fractured. Multiple competing nation-states, regional conflicts, see terrorist networks operating globally, and, he highlighted specific intercepts. This Vladimir Makarov that Price mentioned, he's not exaggerating the threat. Intelligence suggests nuclear material acquisition across multiple countries, attack planning that targets population centers, casualties projected in millions if he succeeds. Can we help stop him? Palmer asked from Tactical, her Spartan instincts immediately identifying combat application. We can, Roland confirmed. Our sensors can track nuclear signatures that their technology can't detect. Our intelligence analysis can process data patterns faster than their systems. Our forces can deploy with precision that turns difficult operations into achievable missions. But Captain, his avatar's expression shifted to concern. Helping them means revealing more of our capabilities, means demonstrating what UNSC can do when applied to their scale conflicts. That could reassure them, or it could terrify them. Showing them we could end their wars with ease might make them question whether we'd ever turn those capabilities against them. Lasky processed the variables with command experience earned through situations where right decision wasn't obvious. Help too much and risk intimidation. Help too little and waste opportunity to build trust through demonstrated commitment. We help, Lasky decided, but we do it carefully. Provide intelligence support, orbital reconnaissance, transportation if requested, but we let their forces conduct the actual operations, their soldiers, their tactics, their victory. We're force multipliers, not replacements. That distinction matters. Roland, coordinate with Chief. Provide whatever technical support Task Force 141 needs, but make clear, this is their mission. We're just making it easier. Aye, Captain, Roland confirmed. And sir, there's one more thing. Captain Cutter wants to speak with you, private channel. It says it's about force deployment options. I suspect he's offering Spirit of Fire's ground capabilities. Marines, armor, air support. He's been out of contact for decades, probably eager to contribute. Put him through, Lasky ordered. The holographic display shifted to show Captain Cutter, older than his official record suggested, weathered by years of survival beyond UNSC support, but carrying authority that came from keeping crews alive when circumstances said they should die. Captain Lasky, Cutter said with slight smile. Hell of a situation we found ourselves in. Different Earth, primitive technology, terrorist threats that require immediate response. I've been listening to your coordination with Chief and Task Force 141. Smart approach, measured support rather than domination. But Tom, his expression shifted to pragmatic assessment. If this Makarov really has nuclear materials and is planning mass casualty attack, we might need more than measured. We might need overwhelming. And Spirit of Fire has capabilities that could end this threat decisively. Say the word and I'll deploy Marines, armor, air support, whatever you need. Appreciated, Lasky replied, recognizing offer that came from Commander who'd spent career making hard decisions. But Jim, we need to be careful. These people just discovered we exist. Deploying UNSC forces in battalion strength could be interpreted as invasion rather than assistance. We demonstrate capabilities through careful application, not overwhelming display. Chief and a small ODST team provide support that's useful without being threatening. That's calibration we need right now. Understood, Cutter acknowledged. But Tom, keep Spirit of Fire in reserve. If this goes sideways, if Makarov's threat is worse than intelligence suggests, if Task Force 141 needs reinforcement, we're ready, that's promise. Noted, Lasky confirmed. And Jim, it's good to have you back. Even if back means different universe where humanity never left their solar system. We'll figure this out together. The transmission ended, leaving Lasky to contemplate situation that transcended normal command parameters. 2 UNSC vessels, thousands of personnel, and capabilities that could reshape this Earth's geopolitical balance, all while trying to establish peaceful contact without triggering panic or conflict. It was, he reflected, exactly the kind of impossible situation that defined UNSC operations. And somehow, they'd make it work. Because that's what they did. UNSC Infinity, Hangar Bay, 24 hours after first contact. Soap had seen a lot of strange things during his career with Task Force 141. Black site facilities that officially didn't exist. Experimental weapons that defied conventional physics. Intelligence operations that made conspiracy theories look tame by comparison. But nothing prepared him for walking through the Infinity's hangar bay. The space was massive. Easily 3 football fields long, Ike's ceiling stretching 30 meters overhead, filled with military hardware that made modern Earth equipment look like museum pieces. Pelican dropships that could carry entire squads into combat zones with armor that shrugged off anti-aircraft fire. Warthog reconnaissance vehicles mounting chain guns that fired depleted uranium rounds at rates that made conventional weapons look like muskets. And everywhere. Personnel moving with disciplined efficiency that spoke to military culture transcending technological disparity. Jesus Christ, Soap breathed, watching an ODST, orbital drop shock trooper, walked past in armor that made contemporary combat gear look inadequate. "This is just the hangar. They've got how many more decks?" 17, the ODST escorting them replied with a slight smile that suggested he'd heard similar reactions before. "Plus, subdecks for engineering, medical, research facilities, and crew quarters. Infinity isn't just warship. It's mobile city. 5.5 kilometers of UNSC engineering. Carries complement of over 17,000 personnel when fully crewed. Though right now we're running skeleton staff since half our forces are deployed against the created." "The created," Price repeated, recognizing term from briefings Chief had provided during their coordination. "Rogue AI faction that's attempting to impose forced peace through technological domination. Your Cortana." "Former Cortana," the ODST corrected with bitterness that suggested personal loss. "She was UNSC's greatest asset during Covenant War. Saved humanity multiple times. Then she decided that saving us required controlling us. That's..." He paused. "That's why we understand your concern about our capabilities. We know what happens when overwhelming power gets directed by good intentions without consent. We've been fighting against exactly that philosophy. So when we say we're not here to dominate your Earth, we mean it. We've seen what domination looks like. We won't become what we're fighting." Ghost, who'd been maintaining tactical silence while processing their surroundings, finally spoke. "Your chief, Spartan 117. He's not normal infantry. Those augmentations, that armor, he's..." "What? Special forces?" "Spartan 2, the ODST replied with reverence that transcended normal military respect. Enhanced from childhood through genetic augmentation, surgical modification, and training that made basic SEAL qualification look like elementary school. His bones are practically unbreakable. His muscles are enhanced beyond human limits. His reflexes are faster than your eyes can track. And that Mjolnir armor..." He gestured toward where Chief stood briefing with Captain Lasky. "That's half-ton of titanium alloy, energy shields, and neural interface technology that makes him effectively a walking tank. There are maybe 30 Spartan 2s still active. They're humanity's most effective soldiers, built to fight aliens who were exterminating us species by species." "Built," Gaz said quietly, processing implications. "You said built? He was a child when they did this to him?" "They all were," the ODST confirmed, his tone carrying moral complexity that suggested UNSC personnel had debated this extensively. "Spartan 2 program recruited children, augmented them, trained them to be perfect soldiers. It's controversial. Some say it was necessary to survive the Covenant War. Others say it was unconscionable regardless of results. But either way, Chief and his Spartans saved humanity. Multiple times, at costs most people will never comprehend. So yeah, he was built. But he chose to keep fighting. That choice matters." Price absorbed this with expression mixing tactical assessment and ethical consideration. He'd worked with special forces from dozens of nations, understood that elite capabilities sometimes required controversial methods, but enhanced children was line that most modern military ethics wouldn't cross. "Right," Price said finally, recognizing that judging parallel universes' desperate wartime decisions served no tactical purpose. "Let's meet with your captain. Coordinate operational parameters. Figure out how we stop Makarov using your capabilities without creating political incident that makes every government on Earth panic about orbital invasion." They were escorted to conference room that somehow managed to feel both military utilitarian and diplomatically appropriate. Large enough for 20 personnel, equipped with holographic displays that projected tactical data with resolution that made contemporary systems look primitive. And currently occupied by Captain Lasky, Commander Palmer, Roland's avatar, and Master Chief. "Captain Price," Lasky said, rising with gesture that suggested respect between commanders rather than rank hierarchy. "Welcome aboard. I understand Chief briefed you on our situation, displaced through dimensional accident, attempting to establish peaceful contact, offering technological assistance without political domination. That about cover it?" "Accurately," Price confirmed, unsettling into chair that adjusted automatically to his dimensions. Small touch that suggested attention to detail beyond purely military concerns. We've reported your arrival to NATO Command. Multiple governments are requesting formal diplomatic contact. United Nations wants to convene emergency session. Everyone's nervous but trying to process this through established frameworks rather than panic. Your broadcasts helped, claiming peaceful intent, identifying as human exploration forces. But Captain Lasky, words only carry so far. Actions matter more. How we coordinate on Makarov operation will demonstrate whether your intentions match your statements. Agreed, Lasky replied, pulling up holographic display showing Eastern Europe with overlay highlighting suspected Makarov network locations. Roland's been analyzing your intelligence databases. With permission from signals we've intercepted, we've identified 17 potential locations where nuclear material could be stored. Traditional investigation would take weeks. Orbital reconnaissance with our sensors can narrow that to 3 high-probability sites within hours. Your forces conduct ground operations. We provide intelligence, transportation if requested, and emergency extraction if situations deteriorate. Your victory, your credit, we're support element. That's... Price paused, processing offer that solved operational problems he'd been struggling with for months. That's exactly what we need. But Captain, orbital reconnaissance means revealing sensor capabilities that probably exceed anything Earth militaries possess. That demonstration could reassure allies, or terrify them when they realize you can see through their operational security like it doesn't exist. Noted, Lasky acknowledged. Which is why we're limiting demonstrations to this operation. Prove capabilities through results rather than comprehensive display. Your governments will eventually request more extensive sharing. We'll address that through proper diplomatic channels. Right now, his expression hardened. Right now, we focus on preventing nuclear terrorism. Everything else is secondary. Roland's avatar flickered with analysis that made his usual wit give way to operational urgency. Gentlemen, I've completed sensor sweep. 3 locations show nuclear signatures consistent with enriched uranium in quantities sufficient for weapon construction. Site Alpha, abandoned military installation near Pripyat. Site Bravo, underground facility in Caucasus Mountains. Site Charlie, warehouse district and industrial region outside Moscow. Makarov's network operates across all 3 locations. Attacking one could trigger response at others. Recommend coordinated simultaneous operations. Simultaneous, Soap repeated, recognizing logistical complexity. That means splitting our forces. Task Force 141 is 4 operators. Even with your support, why hitting 3 sites simultaneously is achievable with UNSC assets, Palmer interrupted, her Spartan directness cutting through tactical concerns. Chief leads one team, I lead another, Captain Price leads third. We provide Spartan support, ODST backup, orbital intelligence, and air cover if requested. Your operators maintain command authority. We follow your tactical decisions. But we bring capabilities that turn impossible operations into difficult ones. Price looked at his team. Silent communication that suggested they were processing offer that solved operational problems while creating political ones. Ghost, Price said finally. You're thinking this reveals too much, makes us dependent on capabilities we can't replicate, creates precedent where Earth forces need orbital support to accomplish missions. Yes, sir, Ghost confirmed. But I'm also thinking that if we don't stop Makarov, millions die. And pride is poor consolation for casualties we could have prevented. Tactical pragmatism says we accept the help, figure out political implications after we've stopped nuclear terrorism. Soap? Price asked. I'm thinking that Spartan lass just offered to follow our tactical command despite being able to punch through tank armor, Soap replied with slight grin. That's respect we don't usually get from special forces who think they're superior. I say we take the help. Show them how SAS operates. Maybe teach these space soldiers a thing or two about ground tactics. Gaz, I'm thinking we're about to conduct joint operation with forces from parallel universe using technology that makes science fiction look conservative, Gaz said with expression mixing apprehension and excitement. And I'm thinking that's either greatest tactical opportunity of our careers or setup for disaster that gets written about in history books. But either way, We're doing it. Because stopping Makarov matters more than comfort. Price absorbed his team's assessments with command experience that had guided them through impossible situations before. Sometimes you trusted allies you barely knew because mission demanded it. Sometimes you accepted capabilities you didn't fully understand because alternatives were worse. And sometimes you made decisions that felt wrong but were necessary because the mathematics of survival demanded uncomfortable choices. Right then, Price decided, looking at Lasky and Palmer with expression that committed Task Force 141 to alliance that would reshape both universes. We accept your support. Coordinate operational parameters. Deploy simultaneously against all 3 sites. Your Spartans follow our tactical command. We maintain operational authority. You provide technical capabilities and backup. And when this is done, when Makarov stopped and nuclear threat is neutralized, we sit down with our governments and yours, figure out long-term coordination that doesn't create dependency or political crisis. Agreed. Agreed. Lasky confirmed, extending hand across table in gesture that transcended military formality into alliance forged through mutual necessity. They shook, and somewhere monitoring the conversation through secure channels, intelligence services from multiple Earth governments watched in real time as humanity of 2 universes committed to joint military operation that would either validate peaceful intentions or reveal capabilities that made conventional defense obsolete. The outcome would determine whether first contact became foundation for cooperation or source of fear that poisoned future relations. No pressure. Site Alpha, Pripyat Exclusion Zone, 48 hours later. The abandoned city looked like frozen moment in time, buildings deteriorating from decades of neglect, streets empty except for vegetation reclaiming urban infrastructure. Radiation warning signs marking contamination zones that would remain dangerous for millennia. Perfect location for terrorist network to store nuclear materials without civilian interference or government monitoring. Master Chief moved through the ruins with silence that made his half-ton armor seem weightless, his motion tracker displaying friendly contacts. Captain Price, 50 meters north, conducting parallel advance, 2 ODSTs providing overwatch from elevated positions. And orbiting overhead, Pelican dropship ready for emergency extraction. Motion tracker shows 12 contacts in primary structure, Chief transmitted through encrypted channel. Armed, disciplined movement patterns. Professional security rather than local militia. This is the location. Confirmed, Price replied through comlink, his voice carrying across technological gap with clarity that made 21st century radio seem primitive. We're detecting similar patterns on thermal. Makarov's people. They're securing something valuable. How do you want to approach this? The question carried weight beyond tactical inquiry. Price was establishing operational hierarchy, and confirming that despite Chief's superior capabilities, the SAS captain maintained command authority. Chief appreciated the professionalism. Your operation, Chief confirmed. I'm support. What's your tactical preference? Stealth approach, Price decided. Confirm nuclear material presence before engagement. If possible, secure materials without firefight that could trigger response at other sites. But if stealth fails, his tone hardened. We go loud fast, overwhelming force. No half measures, your armor and my team's experience combined. These bastards don't get time to destroy evidence or trigger contingencies. Understood, Chief acknowledged. Deploying. They moved with coordination that transcended their brief partnership. Chief's enhanced reflexes and sensor systems identifying threats before Price's team encountered them. Price's tactical experience navigating through urban terrain with efficiency that impressed even Spartan assessment algorithms. Both forces adapting to each other's capabilities in real time. The primary structure was Soviet-era industrial building, concrete and steel construction designed to survive nuclear war, but now serving as storage for materials that could cause one. Security was professional. Overlapping fields of fire, backup positions, communication protocols that suggested military training rather than terrorist improvisation. That's not local talent, Price observed through scope. Nights watching guards rotate with precision that spoke to systematic training. That's private military, expensive. Makarov's paying for quality security, which means whatever's inside is valuable enough to justify the cost. Chief's sensors penetrated concrete walls with radiation detection that confirmed worst fears. Enriched uranium, weapons grade, quantity sufficient for multiple devices, and stored in lead-lined containers that conventional detection would miss, but Mjolnir's enhanced sensors identified clearly. Confirmed, Chief transmitted. Nuclear materials present, multiple containers, weapons-grade enrichment. This is the cache. Right, Price said, making tactical decision that balanced stealth against time constraints. We secure those materials before Makarov can move them. Chief, can your armor handle direct approach? Draw fire while my team flanks? Affirmative, Chief confirmed, recognizing role that Spartans had performed countless times. Armored spearhead that created tactical opportunities for lighter forces. Mjolnir shields can absorb conventional small arms indefinitely. I'll breach primary entrance. You exploit the distraction. Copy that, Price acknowledged. On your mark. Chief moved with speed that made tactical approach look like teleportation. One moment positioned at standoff distance, and next moment charging across open ground with acceleration that Mjolnir's servo systems provided, covering 60 meters in 3 seconds while enemy guards transitioned from routine patrol to combat alert. They fired. Automatic weapons, professional technique, concentrated volleys that should have shredded unarmored target. Chief's shields flared blue as kinetic energy was absorbed and dispersed, and the Mjolnir's energy barrier handling ballistic impacts with casual efficiency that made their weapons look inadequate. He reached the primary entrance in 5 seconds, his armored fist punching through reinforced steel door with force that turned security barrier into shrapnel. His MA-40 assault rifle already tracking targets as he entered the structure. The guards inside had approximately 0.8 seconds to process that their defensive position had just been breached by what looked like walking tank, before Chief's neural interface and enhanced reflexes let him engage all 6 simultaneously. Controlled bursts that eliminated threats without destroying the nuclear materials they were protecting. 6 down. 0 friendly casualties. Engagement time, 4.3 seconds. Bloody hell. Soap's voice came through calm with awe that transcended professional composure. That was, did he just punch through the door? Focus, Price commanded, his team already exploiting the breach that Chief created. Secure the materials, confirm inventory, make sure Makarov didn't leave surprises. They swept through the structure with coordination that suggested both forces were adapting to each other's capabilities, faster than normal military integration would allow. Chief providing armored supremacy that conventional forces couldn't match. Price's team bringing tactical flexibility and intelligence assessment that complemented Spartan efficiency. The nuclear materials were secured within 8 minutes. 4 containers, a total mass suggesting multiple weapon payloads, documentation in Russian indicating transport schedule that would have moved materials within days if operation hadn't been interdicted. Site Alpha secure, Price transmitted to Overall Operation Command. Nuclear materials confirmed and contained. No friendly casualties. Hostile forces neutralized. What status on Bravo and Charlie? Commander Palmer's voice came back with Spartan efficiency. Site Bravo secure. Commander Palmer reporting. Materials secured. Enemy forces neutralized. Ghost and Gaz performed excellently. Professional competence exceeded expectations. Soap grinned despite tension. She likes us. Site Charlie encountered complications, another voice reported. ODST team leader supporting Captain Cutter's ground deployment. Heavy resistance, Makarov's personal guard. They're fortified and not surrendering. Recommend additional assets. Negative, Captain Lasky's voice cut through with command authority. Do not escalate. We're trying to establish peaceful presence. Full orbital strike would accomplish mission but destroy credibility. Continue ground operations. Chief, can you reinforce? Chief was already moving toward the Pelican that would transport him to Site Charlie before Lasky finished the question. En route, ETA 12 minutes. Price watched the Spartan depart with expression mixing relief and tactical assessment. They'd secured one site. They prevented nuclear materials from reaching Makarov's network, and demonstrated that cooperation between UNSC and Earth forces was achievable. But Site Charlie's resistance suggested the operation was far from complete, and somewhere beyond Earth's orbit, sensors were detecting energy signatures that matched the dimensional rupture that had brought UNSC forces to this universe. Something else was coming through. Something that would make Makarov look like manageable problem by comparison. Site Charlie. Moscow Industrial District. Final assault. The warehouse complex looked like fortress improvised from civilian infrastructure. Reinforced concrete barriers blocking vehicle approaches. Defensive positions established with professional efficiency that suggested military engineering. And most concerning, thermal signatures indicating over 40 hostile combatants dug in with crew-served weapons and prepared fallback positions. This wasn't opportunistic terrorist cell. This was Makarov's elite guard making final stand to protect whatever assets remained after Sites Alpha and Bravo had been compromised. Captain Cutter stood in the Spirit of Fire's CIC, Combat Information Center, watching tactical feeds from ground forces with expression mixing tactical assessment and command frustration that came from decades fighting wars where proper support meant difference between victory and casualties. Captain, his tactical officer reported with urgency that suggested situation was deteriorating. ODST team is pinned down. Enemy forces have overlapping fields of fire from elevated positions. Our people can't advance without taking casualties. And sir, thermal imaging shows they're moving something. Large container. Could be the remaining nuclear materials. If they extract before we can secure... They won't, Cutter interrupted. Us making decision that balanced tactical necessity against political constraints. Deploy additional ODST squads. Warthog support. Air cover. We end this now before they can relocate those materials. Authorization. Weapons free on hostile forces, but... His voice hardened. Precision targeting only. This is urban area. Civilian infrastructure nearby. We demonstrate UNSC capabilities without creating collateral damage that makes local populations fear us. Understood? Understood. Sir. Tactical confirmed. The reinforcements deployed with efficiency that spoke to decades of UNSC military doctrine. Pelican dropships inserting additional ODST squads into tactical positions that flanked enemy defenses. Warthog reconnaissance vehicles providing mobile fire support with chain guns that suppressed hostile positions without destroying surrounding structures. And overhead. AV-14 Hornet attack craft establishing air superiority that conventional anti-aircraft couldn't contest. The enemy forces adapted quickly, falling back to secondary positions, utilizing urban terrain to negate UNSC technological advantages. And most concerning, establishing deadman switches on the nuclear material containers that would trigger conventional explosives if security was breached incorrectly. They're willing to destroy the materials rather than let us capture them, the ODST team leader transmitted with controlled frustration. We need specialists. Like someone who can breach those containers without triggering the charges. And we need them fast because thermal shows they're preparing transport. If they get those materials mobile, Chief is en route. Cutter confirmed, tracking the Pelican carrying Spartan 117 towards Site Charlie with ETA rapidly approaching 0. Hold position, maintain containment. Don't let them extract. The Pelican descended through Moscow airspace with speed that made civilian air traffic controllers panic until NATO liaisons confirmed UNSC authorization. Still uncomfortable political reality that parallel universe military was conducting operations on Earth soil, but necessary cooperation given stakes involved. Chief dropped from the Pelican before it fully landed, his Mjolnir armor absorbing impact that would have shattered normal soldiers' legs. His motion tracker immediately processing tactical situation. 43 hostile contacts, 12 ODST friendlies in defensive positions, nuclear materials in central warehouse surrounded by deadman switch explosives. Sitrep, Chief transmitted to the ODST team leader. Spartans, thank God, the ODST replied with relief that transcended normal military composure. Hostiles have nuclear materials rigged with conventional charges. They're threatening to destroy them if we breach. Yoan, sir. We've identified the man coordinating their defense. Visual confirms Vladimir Makarov. He's personally commanding this position. If we can take him alive. Understood, Chief confirmed, his tactical assessment shifting immediately. Makarov alive was intelligence bonanza, potential leverage for dismantling his entire network, and most importantly, symbolic victory that demonstrated cooperation between UNSC and Earth forces could achieve what neither accomplished separately. But capturing terrorist mastermind who'd evaded capture for years while he commanded fortified position protected by fanatics willing to die required approach that balanced overwhelming capability with surgical precision. Captain Price's voice cut through the tactical channel with timing that suggested he'd been monitoring the situation. Chief, Price here. I'm 15 minutes out with Soap and Ghost. Makarov is mine. I've been hunting this bastard for years. He doesn't get to die in firefight. He faces justice, but professional respect colored his tone. I need him alive. Can your armor handle approach that draws fire while we infiltrate? Affirmative, Chief replied, recognizing roles Spartans had perfected through decades of combat. Armored distraction that created opportunities for lighter forces to exploit. I'll breach primary defenses. You exploit the opening. Makarov is your objective. I'll secure the nuclear materials. Copy that, Price confirmed. And Chief, try not to make us look completely useless. We've got reputation to maintain. Chief's response carried something that might have been dry humor. I'll try. The assault began with Chief's direct approach. Not subtle, not tactical in conventional sense, but leveraging capabilities that conventional forces couldn't match. Mjolnir armor absorbing concentrated fire from multiple crew-served weapons without shield failure. His enhanced strength allowing him to physically displace reinforced barriers that should have required explosive breaching, and most impressively, his neural interface and combat algorithms letting him engage 12 targets simultaneously with precision that made automatic weapons look inadequate. The Makarov's guards were professional, well-trained, and equipped with modern military hardware. It didn't matter. Chief advanced through their defensive positions like natural disaster given tactical purpose, his presence creating exactly the distraction that Price's team needed to infiltrate through secondary approach that conventional defense had left vulnerable once primary position committed to stopping the Spartan. Bloody beautiful, Soap whispered as they slipped through maintenance access while enemy forces focused entirely on the armored giant, systematically dismantling their defenses. He's not even trying to be stealthy, just walking through them like they're not there. Focus, Price commanded, his rifle tracking toward the central warehouse where thermal imaging showed Makarov coordinating defensive response. Ghost, you've got Overwatch. Soap, with me. We take Makarov alive. Non-lethal if possible, lethal if necessary. But he doesn't escape, not this time. They moved with coordination perfected through years of joint operations. Ghost establishing sniper position that covered their approach. Soap and Price advancing with tactics that mixed SAS training with improvisation that came from hunting targets who'd evaded capture through conventional methods. Makarov stood in the warehouse's control room watching tactical displays that showed his defense collapsing under assault that shouldn't be possible. Single combatant in armor that made anti-tank weapons look insufficient, supported by forces that coordinated with precision, suggesting orbital intelligence and command structure beyond anything regional military could deploy. This is UNSC, Makarov observed with calm that suggested he'd processed implications faster than his guards. The ship's in orbit. They're intervening. He smiled without humor. That's unfortunate. I planned for many contingencies. Not for parallel universe military deciding to enforce Earth's laws. His lieutenant looked at him with expression mixing loyalty and recognition that their position was untenable. Orders? Destroy the materials. Makarov decided with cold calculation. If we cannot use them, ensure no one can. Trigger the charges. Eliminate this facility and everyone in it. That includes the Spartan. Let's see if his armor can survive conventional explosive tonnage designed to level city blocks. The lieutenant reached for the detonator. Ghost's shot took him through the window. 7.62 millimeter round traveling 850 meters per second, Precision that put the bullet through target's hand before he could complete the trigger motion. Ballistic impact that shattered bones without killing because Price's orders specified non-lethal when achievable. The detonator clattered to the floor. Makarov turned toward the window with recognition that his situation had just transitioned from untenable to captured, his hand moving toward sidearm in gesture that suggested he'd prefer death to capture. Price entered through the door with rifle-trained center mass, his voice carrying authority that had commanded operations across the globe. Don't. You've lost. Accept it. Face justice, or die here and accomplish nothing. Your choice. Makarov's hand stopped moving, his tactical assessment apparently reaching same conclusion Price had. Dying achieved nothing. Capture at least offered possibilities, however remote. Captain Price, Makarov said with recognition that suggested he'd studied his hunters as thoroughly as they'd studied him. You've been persistent. I admire that. Most men would have given up after the casualties I've inflicted. But you, he smiled, you're too stubborn to accept defeat. That's almost admirable. But tell me, how does it feel knowing you needed alien intervention to accomplish what years of hunting couldn't achieve? Feels like justice delayed but not denied, Price replied, his rifle never wavering. And they're not aliens, they're human. From somewhere else, somewhere humanity achieved capabilities we haven't. But that doesn't change fundamental reality. You're under arrest, for terrorism, for mass murder, or for planning nuclear attacks that would have killed millions. You'll face trial. You'll answer for your crimes, and whatever happens after, that's consequence of choices you made. Poetic, Makarov observed. But Captain, you should know, I'm not the only threat you face. Those ships in orbit? Their arrival changed everything. Governments are panicking, military forces are mobilizing. Some people view UNSC as salvation. Others view them as invasion force using humanitarian crisis as cover. You've created a situation where Earth's fractured governments must decide whether to embrace parallel universe military or resist their presence. That division, his smile widened. That's opportunity for people like me. Chaos's ladder. Your alien friends just built me dozen new rungs. Before Price could respond, proximity alarms shrieked across every UNSC tactical channel simultaneously. Not local threat, not ground-based emergency, but something that made every sensor on both the Infinity and Spirit of Fire overload with readings that violated known physics. Captain Lasky's voice cut through with controlled urgency that suggested crisis beyond normal operational parameters. All UNSC forces, this is Infinity Actual. We have situation. Orbital sensors detecting massive energy spike. Same signature as the slipspace rupture that brought us here. But larger, more powerful. Something's coming through. Something... His voice carried alarm that transcended professional composure. Something that's broadcasting Covenant battle language. We have hostile contact. Repeat. Hostile Covenant forces entering this universe. All ground teams, prepare for immediate extraction. We're about to have much bigger problem than nuclear terrorism. UNSC Infinity. Bridge. Orbital defense stations. The view screen displayed nightmare that Captain Lasky had hoped would remain confined to their original universe. The dimensional rupture that had brought them here was opening again. Space tearing along quantum boundaries with violence that made their arrival look gentle by comparison. And through that tear, ships, not UNSC vessels, not human construction, Covenant. Tactical analysis, Lasky commanded, his voice cutting through bridge alarm chaos with authority earned through commanding during situations where wrong decision meant casualties measured in millions. Multiple contacts, Palmer reported from Tactical, her Spartan assessment processing threat parameters with combat-enhanced cognition. Configuration identifies as Covenant Reverence-class cruisers. 4 vessels, each approximately 2 kilometers in length. Plasma weaponry, energy shields, boarding craft. Captain, her voice hardened. These aren't remnant forces. These are mainline Covenant warships, and they're broadcasting on religious channels, claiming this Earth is sacred world that must be purified. She paused. They're preparing to glass the planet. Glassing. Covenant term for orbital bombardment using plasma weapons that superheated planetary surfaces until continents became molten wasteland. Atmospheric composition changed to toxic vapor, and entire ecosystems were reduced to lifeless, radioactive desert. Genocide through overwhelming firepower applied without hesitation or mercy. ROE, Palmer asked, using military shorthand for rules of engagement. Weapons free, Lasky decided without hesitation. These are hostile forces threatening civilian population. We engage. Full UNSC combat doctrine, but... His expression hardened. We coordinate with this Earth's militaries. They need to see us defending them, not just taking over because we can. Roland, broadcast on all channels. Inform Earth governments. Hostile alien forces have entered orbit. UNSC is engaging to protect planetary population. Request they stand by and observe. This is going to be brief. Aye, Captain, Roland confirmed, his avatar processing combat variables with AI speed that made human cognition look glacial. Broadcasting. And sir, I'm detecting response from multiple Earth defense networks. They're mobilizing. Launching interceptors. Preparing orbital defense platforms. They're... His voice carried something approaching admiration. They're trying to help, despite knowing their weapons are insufficient. That's brave. Stupid, but brave. That's human, Lasky corrected. And we honor that courage by making sure they survive to regret the tactical foolishness. Palmer, deploy all longsword interceptors. Engage Covenant fighters before they can establish air superiority. MAC cannons. Target their cruisers. We demonstrate what UNSC can do when defending humans. Any humans, regardless of which universe they're from. The Infinity engaged with firepower that had been designed to contest Covenant superiority during humanity's desperate fight for survival. Mark 2551, magnetic accelerator cannons firing ferric tungsten rounds at 4% light speed with kinetic energy measured in gigatons. Each impact striking Covenant shields with force sufficient to overload defensive systems through sheer momentum transfer. The lead Covenant cruiser's shields collapsed under sustained MAC bombardment, its hull breaching as follow-up rounds punched through armor that couldn't withstand kinetic weapons traveling at relativistic velocities. One cruiser down, 3 remaining. But the Covenant adapted, spreading formation to deny concentrated fire, thus launching boarding craft toward Earth's orbital infrastructure. And most concerning, beginning plasma bombardment protocols that would superheat atmosphere, if not intercepted. Spirit of fire, Lasky transmitted to Captain Cutter. We need your point defense. Those plasma torpedoes reach Earth's atmosphere. Casualties will be measured in millions. Can you intercept? Already engaging, Cutter confirmed. His Phoenix-class ship deploying every defensive system against plasma weapons that threaten the planet below. But Tom, we can stop this attack. Maybe the next. But if that rupture stays open, if more Covenant forces come through, Earth doesn't have defenses for extended siege. We need to close that dimensional tear. Permanently. Agreed, Lasky acknowledged. But first, we stop this assault. Save the planet. Then we figure out how to seal dimensional boundaries. One crisis at a time. The battle that followed would be analyzed by Earth militaries for decades. Orbital combat at scales that made contemporary warfare look primitive. Energy weapons and kinetic bombardment, exchanging fire at velocities that human eyes couldn't track. And most significantly, UNSC forces defending Earth against alien threat with capabilities that demonstrated why humanity had survived genocidal war. And the remaining Covenant cruisers were eliminated within 17 minutes. Combination of MAC cannon bombardment, longsword fighter superiority, and coordinated targeting that exploited Covenant tactical doctrine through experience earned during 30 years of desperate warfare. Earth's defense networks watched in real time as parallel universe military destroyed alien invasion force that contemporary technology couldn't have contested. And the political implications would be debated for generations. Had UNSC just demonstrated they were humanity's protectors? Or had they revealed that Earth's independence was illusion maintained only because UNSC chose not to impose control? But those debates could wait, because the dimensional rupture was still open. and sensors were detecting additional contacts preparing to transit. 1 week later, United Nations emergency session on New York. The Security Council chamber had hosted countless crises, nuclear standoffs, regional conflicts, humanitarian disasters that threatened global stability. But it had never hosted representatives from parallel universe explaining why dimensional barriers needed to remain sealed despite technological benefits cooperation could provide. Captain Lasky stood before assembled diplomats with expression mixing command authority and diplomatic pragmatism. The rupture that brought UNSC to your Earth remains partially open. Our scientists believe it can be sealed, but doing so requires cooperation. Your governments provide resources for construction of dimensional stabilization field. We provide technical expertise and materials you cannot fabricate. Together, as we close the tear before more hostile forces transit. And if we refuse, the Russian ambassador asked with suspicion that characterized international politics. If we determine that potential benefits of maintaining contact with your universe outweigh risks, advanced technology, medical knowledge, alliance with military force that just destroyed alien invasion our weapons couldn't contest, then you condemn both universes to invasion, Lasky replied bluntly. The Covenant forces that attacked were scouts, vanguard elements. If that rupture remains open, they'll send fleets, thousands of ships, genocidal forces that spent 3 decades trying to exterminate humanity in our universe. They'll do the same here, and his voice dropped. There are worse things than Covenant. The Flood. Parasitic organisms that convert all biological life into weapons for exponential expansion. If they detect dimensional pathway between universes, both Earths become infection vectors. That's not political posturing, that's existential mathematics. The chamber fell silent with weight of recognition. Salvation and damnation were sometimes packaged together. Refusing one meant accepting the other. And comfortable answers didn't exist when facing threats that transcended political frameworks. What do you recommend? The Secretary General asked. Seal the rupture, Lasky said. Prevent hostile transit. Then establish formal diplomatic framework for controlled contact. We share technological knowledge carefully. You maintain sovereignty absolutely. UNSC doesn't become occupying force. We become allies who coordinate through proper channels rather than emergency necessity. He paused. That's how civilizations coexist without domination, through choice rather than imposed control. In the back of the chamber, the Captain Price watched with expression mixing satisfaction and concern. They'd stopped Makarov, prevented nuclear terrorism, defended Earth against alien invasion, and now navigated political complexity that would define interplanetary relations for generations. Not bad for weeks' work, Soap whispered beside him. Not done yet, Price replied quietly. Political battles are longer than military ones, but he looked at where Master Chief stood in ceremonial guard position, his presence representing UNSC commitment to defending Earth regardless of political complications. At least we know they're genuine. When crisis came, they fought. For us. That counts for something. The vote was unanimous. Construct dimensional stabilization field, seal the rupture, prevent hostile transit, while maintaining controlled diplomatic contact between universes. UNSC would remain, not as conquerors, as allies who'd proven themselves through actions rather than words. And Master Chief, standing silent guard, processed outcome through combat algorithms that had been refined through decades of warfare. Mission accomplished, civilians protected, alliance forged through mutual sacrifice. That was victory worth achieving. Even if the war, the eternal war against those who threatened humanity regardless of which universe spawned them, would continue. Because that's what Spartans did. They fought, they protected, they never surrendered. Across universes, across realities, across whatever dimensional barriers needed defending.